Welcome to another episode of Carolina Commercial Real Estate Connection. Today we have Adam LaBar with us. Adam, how are you doing, sir?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on, Tony. Appreciate it.
Super excited to have you, sir. Adam is an Air Force vet, so we appreciate his service. And I kind of want to dive into that and how you got into owning your first business and real estate investing. So, could you kind of walk us through what drew you to the Air Force? When did you enlist? How long were you in?
Sure. Yeah. So, boy, both of my parents, my mom and my dad, were Air Force. My dad was a crew chief. My mom was fuel systems. That's how they ended up meeting. So it was just kind of in my blood to join the military. It was, I didn't really know there was another option. That's what we did. So when I turned 16, I got my learner's permits and signed up for the Air Force, like almost within a week of each other. So, it was just, I knew that's what I was going to do. It's what I wanted to do. So I jumped right into it. So I left right after I graduated high school. I was in for a while as an enlisted guy, got out, got married. I was in college, went back as an officer to go be a pilot. I busted my neck and lost that, so I did a couple other jobs instead. But all in all, I was in for about 15 and a half years active duty, and I had a couple years of reserves in the middle of my enlisted and officer time. So about 18 years total before I jumped ship to come and do real estate and business full time.
Yeah, that's a quite a long time there, 18 years.
It's
So,
not a short time, yeah.
yeah, that's a long. So, could you tell me you kind of briefly just touched on there for a second. What happened to your neck and how did that happen and what were the long-term ramifications of it?
Oh yeah. So long term, I'm still dealing with it. But so I was doing combatives, which is kind of like MMA and the military side of the house. So I'm moderately experienced in that world. But I was up against somebody who was not at all experienced in it, and we were trying to learn just a little bit of basic combatives. I'd already done a bunch, but he had no idea what he was doing, and he kind of just fell on top of my head and neck, and I ended up with a bulging and a herniated disc. One of them we had to get surgically replaced, so I put in a titanium disc in my neck. So I had to cut my throat open here and take out the damaged disc that was hitting on my spinal cord and put in a titanium one. So yeah, the day before pilot training, so I was fighting through it the entire time, and they stopped me from doing any combatives and everything. They were like, "Hey, we want to keep you ready for pilot training." So
Mhm.
the Air Force had a very low ability to keep their pilots in, so they were really not wanting to lose another pilot. Day before pilot training, I go through some medical flight screening up in Dayton, Ohio, and the guy says, "Hey, dude, sorry, you can't pull G's. Like he did something to my neck, and I about flew through the ceiling." And he was like, "Nah, dude, like there's no way you could pull G's. You're done." So there went that. And so
How
yeah, I mean,
devastating was that for you? My goodness.
at the time, it was very devastating, right? Because you have this idea, like I'd always wanted to fly. My parents had always told me I should be an officer, but they never taught me how to go become an officer. I didn't know anything different, so I just joined the military. But then once I realized this was an option and I applied for it, I was like, boy, this is like I've always wanted to do this, so this is going to be great. Um, I was super stoked about it the entire time, like all through officer training and everything. All the pilot training students were all talking together, trying to figure it all out. And then that happened, and it was like, boy, there goes that dream. But I ended up flying small planes anyway, so I'm a pilot still, just not turning and burning in an F-15 or anything like that. So, but yeah, it was pretty devastating. But the longer I dealt with it, not with my neck, but the longer I dealt with the fact that I wasn't a pilot, the happier I was because it changed my life dramatically on where my trajectory went after that.
Awesome. Absolutely. Yeah. Normally those biggest challenges in life, arise something within people if they actually
Yeah.
have it. And, that's where you kind of first, you always look back to the one thing, the challenge, how you overcame it. So kind of walk us through, because I know when you were still enlisted, that's when you started up your first business. So could you walk us through, was this about the time frame when that started after that injury or what drew you to start into your other career? What
Yeah.
is that career? And kind of walk us through what drew you in and how you started.
Yeah. So typically what I tell people is I didn't even know what a savings account was till I married my wife, right? So I got married, and then she had that magical thing called a savings account, and like it baffled my mind because like her, so we all have to do in the military, in the government service, you all have to do, you can't get a a paper check, which most people don't anymore, anyways. But so it all has to be direct deposited. Hers direct deposited into her savings account, and she only pulled the little bit out that she needed to live on. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So mine went, of course, into the checking, and the savings had like that $15 that's required to keep it open in it, and that was it. Like it doesn't like it never made sense to me because none of my enlisted friends saved money. I never saw my parents do that. I never like it just it never occurred to me that you should save money and invest. So when I got married, that's the one thing that we never talked about before we got married was money, and I'm really glad we didn't because she might not have married me if she knew how I was. But she really like opened the new world to me, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. So I started researching as much as I could. Ended up going back into the military. My wife had said, hey, we should buy real estate. And I was like, oh, well, sure, whatever. And then I went and lost money in the stock market instead. And then I went back to her with my tail between my legs and said, what was that again about real estate? So that's when I really started to look at it was right about the time I was going back active duty as an officer. Um, uh, and then I just started going to town, and then like after the busted neck, it gave me a little bit more time to do more research, and I took about 4 years of pretty hard research to understand what I wanted to do before I decided to get into apartment buildings. Never had we bought an investment property before I decided that we were going to buy an apartment building. So that's kind of how it got started. We ended up moving to Japan. And I bought my first apartment building while living in Japan. It was a 62 unit apartment. So that's kind of my soiree into the real estate world.
That's impressive. So typically, the story is starting small, and
Hmm.
people work up. So starting with a 62 unit apartment, it's a little bit different. So you said you did 4 years of kind of research, and that's
Yep.
awesome that your wife kind of triggered a lot of this. And you are in business with your wife, which is awesome. And not
Hmm.
everyone, can do that, but I think if you can, it's fantastic. Um, if you and your wife get along good enough to do that. So walk me through how you put together a 62 unit purchase. What timeline? How long ago was this? How you put that together? Did you actually have the savings? Did you get something creative to get that one done?
So towards the end of that 4 years, it was for me in that education frame, it was more analysis paralysis than like actual needed um time
Yeah.
of learning because I had already learned a bunch of stuff and the only thing I was left to learn is go and do it.
Mhm.
But I was like, oh no, I need one more podcast to listen to. I need to go to one more conference. I need to do one more whatever. So I finally went to a conference in LA and I was sitting down and they were up there talking and everybody around me had all these questions and I was answering all of them whether it was about underwriting, whether it was about asset management, whether it was about whatever. And I was like, holy crap, man, you like know this stuff, Adam. Like, what is wrong with you? And that's when it really clicked in my brain. So I joined a group, a mastermind group, which is why I've been such a passionate promoter of mastermind groups since then, is it got me around like-minded people who were thinking the same way, who were desiring for the same things. And then once I was in there, I started answering a bunch of questions in there, reaching out to people, and then somebody reached out to me and said, hey, I've got this deal under contract. It seems like you might be a good fit for it. Let's chat. So I came in with some of the underwriting talent, a little bit of cash, and some of the business side of the house. And I ended up taking down. That was what 2017, I think, 2016, 2017, somewhere around there. Um, and yeah, I mean, again, I was living in Japan, so I clearly was not the boots on the ground. The property was in Tennessee, and I was in Japan. But we had two guys that were boots on the ground. It was a joint venture. We all put in capital to make it happen. And yeah, the rest, as they say, is history. I mean, it took a while for that deal to go through. It was an unbelievably dreadful experience that I wish upon anybody who really wants to do real estate so that they can get the education that I got out of that deal.
Right.
But in the grand scheme of things, the market really helped us out. We were able to sell it and not lose our shirt like it looked like we were going to do. But yeah, it was tough, but it was a good first deal to have because it was one of those I tell people that you either are ready to put your shoulder down and take on anything in real estate after that, or you run away as fast as humanly possible from real estate. And that
Right.
was a rough
So
one.
tell me the experience with, you're saying you had two partners, right, with that deal. how did that experience play out? A lot of times, these can go really south or can build something that you then build momentum and do
Yeah.
future deals. How did that one look for you?
So I'd love to say it was only two partners, but it wasn't. There were multiple. There was two that were boots on the ground, but we had, I think, five of us on the deal.
Oh boy.
And uh, I would not recommend folks do that. It did not work out extremely well. So we had one partner that we ended up having to ask to leave the partnership for various reasons, and that was difficult. We had there was just a lack of ability to communicate back and forth between each other because there were so many cooks in the kitchen that it made it tough when it came to decision making time, when it came to making sure that everybody was on the same page, that contractors were doing what they were supposed to do because one person would think the other person was covering it and the other person like, and it just there were not clear lines in the sand. That was one of those things that I definitely learned that when you have a partnership, when you have teams, you need to make sure there's clear lines in the sand so everybody knows who's responsible for what, and that you can uh, point to the person and say, "Hey, this is your thing. Where is it at?" And it's not "Oh, well, I thought that was Johnny's thing, and I thought that was, Susie's thing," and all the back and forth. So I'd say that it was not handled well, but once it came crunch time, we all kind of were like, "All right, what the heck do we need to do?" And we really started to hone in what we needed to do. Just it took us until it was, we were neck deep in crap before we all stepped up to do what we needed to do.
Yeah, it's very difficult going in partnerships with people that you haven't known long term. I mean, you have the
Yeah.
common interest of real estate, but this happens a lot with real estate transactions, people getting in these partnerships. And exactly what you say, if you don't have some type of, it's basically still you're setting up a business structure with these
Yeah.
people to say, here, create an accountability chart. Who's accountable for what? One person specifically accountable for each thing, like any other business, in order for it to
Hmm.
properly operate and make sure that everyone's carrying equal weight. That's the difficulty. And with five people, that's extremely
Yeah.
difficult. And so, yeah, you said one dropped out. You guys got him out. The other four of you, so you and the three others, did that work out better? Have you maintained relations with them? I know you said you sold out of that property. Have you guys done
Yeah.
anything additional together with any
So
of
we,
these people?
relationship wise, we're all still peachy keen. Everything is great between us. We had all started other deals while this deal was kind of going along. So but not together. There's nothing that would say that we wanted to do it, but other things started coming up in life. I'd already had a couple more deals by the time we sold that, and started with ADPI and doing stuff over there. So my life kind of changed a lot. So um, uh, but no, the relationship with the rest of the guys was still great. No issues after that. But they're all still doing real estate. They're all still pushing through. I think every one of us learned a ridiculous amount from that deal, including how to make sure our partners are taking care of each other and doing the right things. So,
Yeah, that's
but
really,
yeah,
I
and
mean,
in the end, it was good.
yeah, I think that's really all it is. The first
Yeah,
deal, maybe first deal or two, it's really just a learning process. You're
yeah,
going to figure out a bunch of things. And as long as you don't lose your shirt and you stay motivated for doing real estate, then it's upward and onward typically,
yeah.
with as long as the market doesn't fall out, right? then, then
But
you're
even
going
if
to
it
have
does,
to.
it's
Even if it does, if you, as
the
long as
market
you
falling out's part of it. So,
yeah, that's it. So, within this time, you and your wife now have RAL Capital Group.
yeah.
So, you now have significantly more properties. So,
Hmm.
what's your property assets now? And could you kind of walk us through one great deal within your property portfolio?
Boy, yeah. So, we actually over the last, I guess, little over a year ago, we sold our last multifamily property. So we've sold all of them. We exited. So we had a couple syndications, partnerships. So we had a mobile home park partnership. That one was great. It was a good flip that worked out really well. But I'd say that we had an 82 unit apartment up in Indiana. That was a syndication that I would have loved to have held on to, but the massive amounts of fake money getting thrown into the economy really helped inflate the price of that, which made it a great time to sell for our investors. I would have much rather refinance, but we were looking to refinance. We bought that one. Boy, I'm hoping I'm remembering the numbers right. we bought it for, if I remember correctly, 3.2 million. And then I don't know, maybe 2 years later, it was either going to refinance at 4.6 or we were going to sell it at or refinance at 4.4 or sell it at 5.6. So we sold
Hmm.
it at 5.6 because that makes a lot more sense for our investors who wanted to, kind of, get their money back and go through. So I would have much rather personally refinanced that and kept it going, pulled a bunch of cash out and kept it going. But that was a crusher of a deal. I think we were at like 42% IRR or something like that for our investors, which was phenomenal. But again, I give a lot of that credit to the presidency throwing a bunch of money into the economy and giving us a break. But
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the inflation made everybody look like wizards and geniuses
yes,
for those past few years. And I mean, it's still, we've got inflation kind of going up and out of control. So it's hard to really, understand there's a million different talking heads on how this is going to play
yeah.
out. So have you lowered your assets right now? And are you holding more dry powder? Is that your plan at the moment?
Yeah, so we lowered our assets for sure. I mean, I still have a 44 bed assisted living facility up in Atlanta, which I jumped in with a partner of mine year before. I don't remember which now. Sometime in the last year and a half. And that's pretty much the only one I have right now. The rest of it, I mean, I invested in various other passive investments after that, after we sold. So looking forward to seeing kind of how all those turn out for sure. Um, Still looking at apartment buildings. I'm probably going to go, fly up to Georgia and take a look at two of them that I'm looking at right now here in the near future. Still want to buy apartments, still love to do it. But yeah, for the most part, I've just kind of been uh, refocusing. So, I'm going to rewind a second. When I left the military, my whole intention was to actually be a present father, which I was not able to do as much when I was in the military. I was traveling a lot, but also to focus solely on real estate and the education company that we started, and ended up having to take over as the COO of the education company, which completely changed the amount of time I had for real estate. So it kind of made some adjustments in that, which is why I just started throwing money at passive investments because I was more focused in the business on the education company. So. But yeah, that's where I'm at now is doing that mostly, and then real estate is almost a side gig at this point.
Well, that's the good thing about real estate, right? I mean, you can do it passively or
Yep.
actively. And so that's kind of the deal. If somebody's full-time working and you don't have the time to
Yep.
invest in underwriting tons of deals every month and building up that, then you can, build up a network and passively invest. And, to your point early on that you spoke of, jumping in the stock market, you can go in and you don't really have a tangible asset to look at and understand, and basically you can attribute value to buying in a stock. You have no control over what's going to happen with that
Yeah.
company, and you, like myself, I typically have lost in the stock market. But all right, so what you spoke of, so you created or a part owner and created with a group of guys, active duty passive income, which you just spoke to, which you're now COO of. And so that's where you're doing your daily work and operations
Mhm.
for that company. So could you tell us a bit about that company, what its purpose
Yeah.
is?
Yeah, so it's called Active Duty Passive Income. We teach military members and veterans and their families how to invest in real estate. So just like there are a ton of military members and veterans out there, just like I was, that have no idea how to invest, that didn't know that this is a possibility, didn't even really understand their VA loan. My business partner Markion, he's the CEO. He created the company with Eric, another guy, and Mike, and just kind of set the whole thing up. I jumped in as the multifamily guy to kind of start building and teaching multifamily stuff as I was kind of going through all of my processes. Um, so the company started in 2017, late 2017. I came on in early 2018, and then we brought Tim Kelly in as well to help out with the multifamily stuff. He'd been doing mobile home parks and such. So Eric actually heard him on the Bigger Pockets podcast, gave him a call and said, "Hey, you need to join this team. We're awesome." And so that was back, when we started. When I came in, I think we had less than 1,000 people in our group. We've got now 78,000 people, I think it is, inside of our group now. We've got multifamily education, single family education, short-term rental education, and a bunch of just free resources. And a majority of what we have is just a free community to engage and make sure that we're all helping each other out and building our financial freedom.
That's awesome. Such a great thing. There are great deals, and a lot of these active, military people don't understand so much about real estate and the benefits that they are given. And when they're
Hmm.
asked to move to these different areas, they can, a lot don't even know they can reuse those VA loans over and
Yep,
over and over again and just buy. And each time you get, relocated, just leave that house, turn into a rental, get another one with this
yep,
VA loan structure. I mean, you can build up a lot while you're in the service and with good structure so that's a big
for
bonus
sure.
of being in the military if you can take advantage of it. So yeah. And you're in an area where you've got people coming and going. So they're always
Yeah,
great rental areas. So great
yep,
places to invest. So
for
that's
sure.
awesome that you guys are doing that. 78,000. That is huge group of people that you're helping out. That's amazing. So if someone listening here is actively in the military, what's the best way to reach out and become part of active duty passive investment?
Yeah, you can go to activedutypassiveincome.com just to kind of check us out. You can find us on the Facebook group. It's Active Duty Passive Income on the Facebook as well. And you will have to answer every one of the questions. Our team will review and make sure it's answered, and probably even look at your Facebook to make sure that you're actually military. We're very adamant that it's a community for us by us type of thing. But yeah, that's all you got to do. Reach out and go in there. We've got, again, a community outside of Facebook now that we created as well. It's on Circle, a different community platform. It allows us to get rid of the noise of Facebook, and stop, like, Facebook tends to kind of control what people see, even if it's your group, because it's not really your group. It's Facebook's group that you manage, right? So that's why we went off Facebook as well. So if you want to get a little bit more ingrained and indoctrinated into the real estate world, then our circle is a lot better place to go.
Yeah, yeah. Facebook is turning into a monster at
Yeah,
this point.
very much
So
so.
how big is your company structure over there at Active Duty Passive Investing?
So boy, we've got about roughly 15 employees, 15 team members that go about. I mean, we've got some coaches, we've got folks in charge of the um, multifamily education, folks in charge of single family education. We've got a sales and marketing team, of course. We're constantly pushing out videos and content in all sorts of places, and trying to really grow the community as much as possible. Our 10-year goal is to impact 3 million military families. So it's going to take a lot of work to impact 3 million military families, but I think that it is by far a possible endeavor if we keep people just kind of realizing what the opportunities are out there.
That's amazing. That's a beautiful goal to have. And I wish you guys all success in the world on that. That is
Thank you.
awesome. So congrats to you guys for doing that. Next thing that we have that you are also doing is a podcast of your own, and
Mhm.
it's called Biz Dads Podcast. So could you tell us what's the theme of that, how that's going, why you started
Yeah.
that?
So I'll start with the why behind it. So while I was in the military, there was a lot of, so I've wanted to be a dad since I was like 13 years old. So I like, as long as I can remember, I've wanted to be a dad. Yeah. So when I finally, I joined the military, I see a bunch of dads that were never around their kids, a lot of divorces. It was really not a great situation. Um, so, there were even friends of mine who were dads, and I never even knew they were dads because you never saw their kids. They never were around their exes. Like, they never talked about their kids. Like, I just didn't even know that they were dads. And it was like that broke my heart because I was thinking to myself, man, I can't wait to be a dad. And that's terrible, you know? Long story short, I get out of the military because I want to be a dad. I want to be more present. There was one time I was leaving. We were living in Japan. Again, I'd already started my real estate endeavors. I'd had a couple properties. I'd come back from one of my many trips that I had there. And my son, I was taking the trash out. My oldest son, who was probably 3 at the time, came running up to me, crying, pulling on my pants, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, don't leave again." And I was literally just taking the trash out. So that was the beginning of me having to leave. So fast forward, I'm now in entrepreneur world and I'm looking at all the entrepreneurs and I'm talking to a bunch of people and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing all this for my family." And they're at work 16, 17 hours a day. And it's like, "Are you actually doing this for your family?" Like it doesn't make sense. And I could catch myself doing the same thing. So it's like, I want to talk to dads who are crushing it as fathers, who are doing well as dads and entrepreneurs. Hence business dads, biz dads, right? So if I could talk to a biz dad who is really doing well and I can steal all of their good ideas by having a 2 hour long conversation with them, then great. That's what I need to do. So that's kind of why I started it. Was just to talk to as many awesome dads who are crushing it in business and fatherhood, so that I can learn as much as I can. Hopefully, somebody who listens to it gets something out of it as well. But really, it's just a selfish endeavor for me to steal everybody's good ideas.
Well, that's okay. Well, I mean, it is amazing because, and I understand, yes, military, but in just the general business world as well, it's astonishing to see how many people. Yeah, it's always that you're working for the family, working for something out there. At some point, by the time that you're going to actually enjoy it with the family, you mean you can buy
Yeah,
all these things for your family, but when are you spending that quality time?
yeah,
So it's always about what giving the family, providing for the family, but you're probably not then giving the wife enough attention, not giving these kids the attention or the time. So
yeah.
doing that how you've structured your life is phenomenal. One other thing that you're doing, your family, you homeschool your children, which we
Hmm.
kind of talked about here in the very beginning before we even started recording, and you kind of went through how that's evolved over the years. And I love the fact of homeschooling now. So you guys, we've gone over a couple things that you've done, which is great. So you've created the one company, and now you saw that that was kind of taking you away from your family. So then you went more passive on the real estate, and you have the COO position, but you're at home every time, being able to spend time with your kids on a daily basis, which is awesome. So
Yeah.
kind of lay out what's important with your children on a daily basis and how you set priorities with the kids.
Yeah. So I started when I was still in the military and doing real estate. I was already building my transition out, but my kid, my oldest, my youngest, or my now middle, was just in daycare. But my oldest was in a private Christian school, and then we moved down to Florida about a year and a half ago, and put him into third grade, and we put our youngest at the time again into a private Christian school. For a preschool, and it was like a I don't know, the first private school we were in down here, I was not a big fan of. We moved him to a different private school after we moved into our house we're in now. That was a little bit closer and I liked better. But he was still doing like 45 hours a week of school stuff. It was like you're
Goodness.
in school for, 7 hours to 8 hours a day. And then you come home and you've got, on top of that, you've got your schoolwork, your homework that you have to do. And it was like, I can't do this. Like I'm working from home and been hearing about the homeschool side of the house and I was like, I need to figure something out. So my wife and I were praying about it, trying to figure out what we needed to do, having a lot of conversations. I was interviewing people. I was talking to other abundance guys who are homeschooling. I was in all of the education that I could to learn what it actually would take. And the more I learned, the more I was like, I'm pretty sure I could do this, right? I could knock out a few hours in the morning and get a majority of the stuff out that I need to. So I talked to all my business partners with over at ADPI. I said, "Hey, this is what I need to do for my family. Like, I want to be able to bring them with me." That was another thing that was very enticing about the homeschool stuff was I traveled a lot for the military and never got to bring the kids for obvious reasons that, Africa is not exactly the best place to drag my kids when you're in a war-torn country. Um, but um, but I wanted to bring them everywhere I went now. I did not want to miss all of those times anymore. So I said, okay, well now if they're in homeschool, I can bring them everywhere I go. Like, so I've taken them to San Antonio, up to Philly, up to New Jersey. I've taken them to Mexico. I've taken them out to Vermont. I've taken them all over the place in this school year. They've gone. And, so from 7 to 10, I block out my calendar. That's their time specifically. I've got an au pair at the house, which if it wasn't for having an au pair, there's no way I would like be able to do this because my wife is still Air Force, so she's going to be retiring next year. But having the au pair here is a game changer for sure. Like the au pair's out right now at a homeschool field trip, right? So there's a bunch of other kids getting together, and they're all hanging out and having a great time. So that's awesome. But yeah, from 7 to 10, I do straight education with the boys. Whether it's math, whether it's writing, whether it's reading, whatever it is, and then there's some independent work that they do after that. Like Adam this week was super excited. He finished all of his schoolwork for the week in the first 3 days. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, he was like, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to work on tomorrow's stuff today because I want to have a 3 day weekend." And then it was, "Hey, I'm gonna do Thursday stuff today because I want to like." And it was just he finished everything, and I was like, "Well done! Like, go ahead, you got the time off." So rather than having to do more work, I said, "Okay, you wanted to earn that 4 day weekend, so you've got it." So we had Thursday and Friday off, and he got to enjoy. He still read to his brother, and they were still doing stuff, but it was just a different world. So that time that I get to have with them, the education I get to have, he's harassing me that we haven't started this business together that I said we're going to do, and that's something I really want to do while homeschooling is start a little business with the boys to teach them kind of how my world works, because I think that's much more valuable than learning how to sit still in a classroom. So that's kind of where the important parts of my life are now.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And it just speaks to how much wasted time. It's,
Yeah.
basically an indoctrination space and a elongated daycare that we have in the school system these days. There's so much wasted time
Yeah.
that, to speak, to your sons getting through a week's worth of curriculum, if you push yourself in 3 days, right? And even if
Yep.
not, you're still spending less than half the time of a normal school day and probably getting more curriculum in, and
Hmm.
he's probably actually absorbing the curriculum as opposed to
Yeah.
just doing quick memorization and then forgetting it and going on to the next
Yep.
thing. Memorize, forget, right? So the school system is kind of a mess, but that's awesome. Yeah, so I mean, you've really put together a great life. Someone, to look forward to something like this. This is great way to structure and set up life, and you've really taken and putting what's important first. So I commend you for that. So if someone
Thanks.
wanted to get in touch with you to either, let's say, talk to you and get on BizDad if they're a business owner and would
Mhm.
be a great guest for you, or just reach out to you guys if you're on trying to get into investing and learn more about it, then you wanted to help out. What's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, so if you're military affiliated, the best way to be Adam at activedutypassiveincome.com. If you're not and want to reach out, especially if you're a business owner, want to jump on the BizDad podcast, you can email me at adam at ralcapitalgroup.com. Either myself or my assistant Mary will reach out to you and set some time up to be able to get on a call. Obviously, you can listen to the podcast anywhere podcasts are at, and on YouTube anywhere you want to jump in there. Then you can see my terrible face if you go to the YouTube side, so that's fun. But you also might get to see my kids' faces because I don't edit those at all. So if the kids come in and they're all excited, then guess what? You get to see my kids jump into my office all excited, and probably dragging the dog or the au pair with them. So that's where you can find me.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and we'll put that in the show notes as well. And I can speak to with experience. I've seen Adam with his family. He's a great family man. So good guy to reach out to for family and business. So Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate it. Hopefully we can get you on again sometime soon.
Absolutely, I'm happy to. Thank you so very much for the opportunity. Looking forward to the next time.
Yes, sir. Have a great day, man.
You too, brother.